you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts. And let me ask the crowd, what did Trump do? Why?
Can I finish, Simone? Will you just shut up for a minute and let me finish?
Pardon me, sir. You don't get to tell me to shut up on national television.
And we don't tell people to shut up on this show.
As we watch Democrats try to figure out how to deal with this Joe Biden situation, remember, the media and their Democrats have been lying to you this entire time, and the evidence is pretty voluminous.
Well, I think consistent with your reaction, Rachel, and others on the panel, it's kind of a DEFCON 1 moment. I think at the end of the day, the overwhelming reaction, again, it doesn't matter, quite frankly, what people like us say. Right. It's what voters say. And if they were already concerned about, is he up for it? And the way I think about it is, sadly, this really pains me to say this, they're 3 years apart. They seemed about 30 years apart tonight. And I think that's going to be the thing that voters really wrestle with coming out of this.
That was the debate. Look. We always want to be honest with you guys. I don't think we need to, you don't listen to us for us to sugarcoat anything. I think it was a fucking disaster. I think it was like maybe the worst debate I've ever seen in my entire life. It was so fucking awful because Joe Biden just in every single way failed at that debate. And I don't know what else to say there except that and then, you know, I won't make any other predictions now, but it was a disaster.
38 years of covering politics, I've never heard a party panic the way I've been hearing them in the last 12 hours on the Democratic side. It's kind of like a political equivalent of a bank run, right? A run on the bank. They're just so concerned about this. And there is conversation about what to do and whether there should be a new nominee at this point. Even people like Senator Jeanne Shaheen, an incumbent Democratic senator, said that's a question that now is on the table.
The man is obviously way too old, has something, I don't know what it is, he's obviously hiding it, onset dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, I don't know, but he definitely has something. He can't remember anything. We beat Medicare? You think they're not going to use that in an ad? You think that's the best candidate the Democratic Party has? If that's the best candidate the Democratic Party has, the Democratic Party is a disaster. If you think that, you think the Democratic Party is the worst party in American history. There's not a single Democrat better than that to go up against Trump.
Right now, as we speak, there is a deep, a wide, and a very aggressive panic in the Democratic Party. It started minutes into the debate, and it continues right now. It involves party strategists, it involves elected officials, it involves fundraisers. And they're having conversations about the president's performance, which they think was dismal, which they think will hurt other people down the party in the ticket, and they're having conversations about what they should do about it. Some of those conversations include, should we go to the White House and ask the president to step aside? Other of the conversations are about, should prominent Democrats go public with that call? Because they feel this debate was so terrible. They do say, in moments in the debate later, the president got better and got his footing, but then at the end, even his closing statement was a little halting. The contrast between the two candidates. And sometimes there's a parallel universe between the political elites and the American people. It'd be nice to see what the voters say, but I can tell you it started minutes in. It started with the first couple of answers, and it has continued throughout the night from a, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, to what do we do about this? And it involves very senior people in the Democratic Party, including elected officials, saying we have a problem.
And just to co-sign what John is saying, I mean, the panic that I am hearing from Democrats is not like anything that I have heard in this campaign so far. Biden's answers were, in a lot of cases, not coherent, deeply problematic, that he was not able to take pretty straightforward answers and answer them to the American public. And then also at some points, bringing things up that teed up Trump attacks. So there's a real concern here tonight that there's been some real damage done that cannot be undone. Biden solidified the perception among voters, but especially among his base. They were hoping that tonight would be a game changer. They are now seeing a president who is in the White House, who they do not necessarily believe can do this for another 4 years.
David Axelrod?
Look, I can't argue with either of them about how Democratic leaders are reacting to this poll. I think there was a sense of shock, actually, how he came out at the beginning of this debate. how his voice sounded. He seemed a little disoriented. He did get stronger as the debate went on, but by that time, I think the panic had set in. And I think you're going to hear discussions that I don't know will lead to anything, but there are going to be discussions about whether he should continue.
Well, there's no way to sugarcoat it. I thought it was a disaster for President Biden, and I thought it was a disaster for American democracy. I am not one of those people who was saying earlier that Biden should withdraw. In fact, I defended him as being the best viable alternative to Trump. But after last night, I no longer believe that, sadly. I thought he just looked feeble. He looked out of it. It was the worst debate performance I think there's ever been in the history of presidential debates going back to 1960. And I think it raises serious doubts about whether Biden can stop Trump in November. On the current trajectory, I would say he can't. And so I think, President Biden has been a good president. I think he is in control of his administration. I think overall he's done a good job. But, like a lot of people, I think he may exaggerate how indispensable he is. There is a tendency, kind of like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, not hanging it up when she still had time. And I think there's that same danger with President Biden, that he thinks that he's the only guy who can beat Trump, when it's obvious that on the current trajectory, he won't be able to do that. So I think, there need to be some long, hard conversations in the Biden household and within the senior ranks of the Democratic Party, because at this point, I would say the Democrats need a new nominee, and there's still a couple of months to find one. And I would suggest somebody like Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, or Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, would be a much stronger candidate.
It was really hard to watch, and it kind of pains me to say this today, but I think President Biden needs to step down and be replaced.
You do?
If we want to defeat Donald Trump in November, I absolutely think that. And I think Biden's team saw it coming. I think that's why they pushed for an earlier debate, so they'd have time to change course if needed. But they've got to act fast, and I would implore those closest with the president to have the very hard conversations they're going to need to have, and not just for political ramifications, for humanity, for his integrity, and for his legacy, which, I mean, that's all on the line right now. And Democrats need to stop spinning the age problem. We have sat here, and Alyssa has repeatedly brought up that a lot of people are concerned with his age. And over, Democrats have twisted themselves into a pretzel to say, don't believe your lying eyes, it's not true. And even at this table, we've said, look, Joy's 81. Joy Behar at 81.
Must we keep repeating that?
Sorry. Joy Behar at 81
but I am.
Is not Joe Biden at 81.
No.
And that was on full display last night.
I was genuinely in shock last night watching this. Even though I've had concerns for a couple of years about Biden's age, it was stunningly worse than I expected, the performance. I think within the first 90 seconds, it was kind of baked in. And I think a lot of people tuned out some of the later part of the debate. I've been told for a long time, put country before party and support Joe Biden.
Right.
He needs to put country before his own ambition, and he needs to step aside and pass the baton.
Look, I think what we saw was that Biden lost that debate. I think that is an accurate depiction of what happened. Blame it on a cold, blame it on his stuttering, blame it on over-preparation, whatever. But he did lose. Maybe he needs to go. Maybe he needs to be honest with himself and the American people. He can bow out at this time with grace and dignity. He has a record he can be proud of.
There has been a uniformly negative reaction to Biden's performance tonight. Surely, as Joy said, this was about revealing who Donald Trump was, but it was also Joe Biden battling a caricature of himself as an enfeebled person, an impression that Trump has been eager to convey to the country. And he did nothing to disabuse, I think, the country of the notion that he is very old and was lost frequently in that debate. I mean, on answers that should have been, to put it bluntly, a layup for him, whether it was abortion or the attack on abortion medication. His answers were rambling and incoherent. He turned a response on abortion into a mention of migrant killing. I mean, this is a person that clearly was over-prepared and had a lot of different points that were sort of swimming around in his head. And as a result, it felt like the answers that were legible, if you will, were not nearly delivered with the force and the clarity that they should have been.
My job now is to be really honest Joe Biden had one thing he had to do tonight, and he didn't do it. He had one thing he had to accomplish, and that was reassure America that he was up to the job at his age. And he failed at that tonight. Now, does that mean that my phone blowing up with senators and campaign operatives and donors, big donors from all over the country, does that mean that Joe Biden is not going to be the candidate? I don't know that. I think we'll know a lot more in a few weeks, how this plays out, how the polling plays out. But I think a couple of things are going on right now. I think I'm not the only one whose heart is breaking right now. There's a lot of people who watched this tonight and felt terribly for Joe Biden. And, you know, you have to ask, how did we get here? How do we get to the point that we're spending a whole lot of time talking about the vice president tonight instead of talking about the president? And I don't know how the rest of this story is written. I don't know if things can be done to fix this. Based on what I'm hearing from a lot of people, and some of them are people that are in high elective offices in this country, and you might guess where they serve. There is a lot of more than hand-wringing tonight. I do think people feel like that we are confronting a crisis.
Look, we began this conversation before this debate. You know, one of the things was, would either candidate look like the caricature that the other campaign has been trying to paint of him? And at the end of the day, Joe Biden looks like the caricature that conservative media has been painting. And there were no clips tonight, right? This was, you saw it before your eyes. Look, I don't want to just tell you what I think here, Tom. I've been talking to a lot of leaders in the Democratic Party, electeds, coalition leaders. There's a full-on panic about this performance. Not like, oh, this is recoverable. It is more of a, okay, he's got to step aside. There's a lot of that chatter. This is about as bad of a performance in order to that Biden could have delivered if his goal was to try to sort of calm the waters among Democrats. I mean, look, there was a poll just out earlier this week that showed, you know, a lot of Democrats, it's not just elected Democrats, rank and file Democrats are both supportive of Biden but think he should not be seeking a second term. I have a feeling we're going to see more polling on this, and we're going to see that number even higher. But the panic level, particularly among elected Democrats who have to share the ballot with him, there's a full-on panic tonight. Maybe they'll get calmed down in the morning, but there's going to be there's a lot of chatter among donors tonight, a lot of chatter among major elected leaders tonight. Again, if the Biden campaign needs to, they have a lot of calming calls that they're going to have to start making, or they may see this get momentum publicly, and I don't know if they can stop that.
Other Democratic lawmakers had even harsher words. Here's some of what Politico reported from lawmakers and operatives. They said, "We are effed, needs to throw in the towel. He's incoherent. I picked the wrong day to stop sniffing glue. He has to go. Not good. Time for an open convention. Biden is toast. Biden needs to drop out. No question. Hard to argue that Biden should be our nominee. He failed." One congressman told CNN that he wanted to jump off a bridge when President Biden stumbled during an answer about the national debt. Here's what the New York Times opinion page looked like today. After the debate, Tom Friedman, President Biden is my friend. He must bow out of the race. Frank Bruni, Biden cannot go on like this. Patrick Healy, I'm hearing high anxiety from Democrats over Biden's debate performance. Nick Kristof, President Biden, it is time to drop out. A lot of Democrats, Cenk, have been poring over what are the details. What's the possibility for forcing Biden out? There's really no way of doing that. There may be some sort of opportunity if Biden were to voluntarily say, okay, I'm not going to continue.
Give a coherent answer on the biggest issue for Democrats tonight. I've heard from leading Democrats across the United States, elected governors, congressmen, who are texting me and saying, I'm worried I'm going to lose if Joe Biden's at the top of the ticket. Bob Casey, I promise you tonight, in the state of Pennsylvania, is thrown up in his mouth because he knows that if he's got to stand next to Joe Biden, he's going down in Pennsylvania. If he's on the ticket, I don't know how it's going to work.
Yeah, look, it was a really disappointing debate performance from Joe Biden. I don't think there's any other way to slice it. His biggest issue that he had to prove to the American people was that he had the energy, he had the stamina, And he didn't do that. And so I think that is of concern. And I think for a lot of Democrats, that's very disappointing. Look, there is no two ways about it. That was not a good debate for Joe Biden.
Ben? That was painful. I love Joe Biden. I work for Joe Biden. He didn't do well at all. He did not do well at all. And he looked, I'll give you the analysis. You kind of have the old man versus the con man. I can walk you through how I'm supposed to see it and say it, but I just want to speak from my heart. I love that guy. That's a good man. He loves his country. He's doing the best that he can. But he had a test to meet tonight to restore confidence of the country and of the base, and he failed to do that. And I think there's a lot of people who are going to want to see him consider taking a different course now. We're still far from our convention, and there is time for this party to figure out a different way forward if he will allow us to do that. But that was not what we needed from Joe Biden, and it's personally painful for a lot of people. It's not just panic, it's pain for what we saw tonight.
To Vance's point about the president's performance, that's what caused the panic. So the question is, and my question actually is, what happens? Because it's a great political strength of Joe Biden is his resilience and his stubbornness. Yeah. It's also sometimes a blind spot because he is so stubborn. It's going to be very hard to someone, and I don't know who it is, who could go to Joe Biden and say, you need to do this, number one. And the question is, again, like, I'm just telling you, to Abby's point, I've been doing this for 30-something years, going on 40 years, and I have never, ever had what happened on this thing tonight happen in the middle of a debate. It started early, and it continued.
The editorial board at your paper, the New York Times, is urging President Biden to leave the race. You can see the headline there. We put it up. We're putting it up again. That, as you know, is no small thing. Did it surprise you, Peter, that members made this call so quickly after the debate? And what kind of an impact might this have?
Well, as your viewers, I assume, know, there's a difference between the news side of the New York Times and the editorial side of the New York Times. I have nothing to do with the editorial side. So just so everybody understands that this is something completely separate from what I do in terms of reporting. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's an important, editorial platform in the country. And I think more importantly, it reflects, I think, a lot of conversation among Democrats. Put aside the media for a second. What you're hearing from people who, many of whom have supported very strongly Joe Biden over the years, is a great sense of disappointment, a great sense of fear and uncertainty, and a great sense that, maybe he's not at the point where he can carry this out through the fall, much less the next 4 years. And that, I think, has been an undercurrent among many professional Democrats for a long time, but now it's been brought in the open in a way we hadn't seen before. There's a lot of anger out there among Democrats, a lot of consternation. There are Democrats who worry that the White House hasn't been fully, transparent about whatever issues the president may be having, about how age is affecting him. There's a lot of people who are blaming the staff for putting him out there in the first place. Why did they agree to a debate if he was going to have that kind of performance? There's questions about his preparation. That may all be unfair because at the end of the day, it's Biden up there and not the staff. But you can see how the circular firing squad is pretty intense right now, and there's a lot of uncertainty about how to go forward.
I too was on the phone throughout much of the debate with Obama world people, with Democrats, with people who are political operatives, with campaign operatives. My phone really never stopped buzzing throughout. And the universal reaction was somewhere approaching panic. The people who were texting with me were very concerned about President Biden seeming extremely feeble, seeming extremely weak. And I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. President Biden had one job tonight, and it was one primary job. And yes, it was to litigate Donald Trump's, criminality and all of those things. But he had to settle his own party. He needed to settle Democrats. Democrats, they always talk about Democrats are bedwetters and Democrats are always panicking. Yes, Democrats are always panicking. They're always scared, right? They're always thinking they're going to lose. Like Democrats are very pessimistic. This is just neurotic. Who they are. They're neurotic. But Joe Biden's job was to reassure them tonight. His job was to calm his party, to make them feel that, yes, I can do this. I have 4 more years in me. I have the ability and the stamina and the strength to do 4 more years. He did not do that. He did the opposite of that. He made them more panicked. The people who were texting me were even more panicked. They actually expected it to be better than it was. And now they're in I won't say a full-fledged panic, but it's getting there.
And are people that you're talking to who are expressing these concerns, are these people who are involved in Democratic politics, or are these liberals watching TV?
These are not liberals watching TV. These are campaign people. These are people who are either Democratic operatives. These are people who are former, sort of Obama world administration people. These are people who are in the business. Okay. So the civilians are also panicking. They're also texting me, but I was trying to kind of ignore the civilians and really talk to the campaign folks. People are, they're worried, and there is, it's not a full drumbeat yet, but there is talk of, look, here's the thing. I know a lot of politicians. I just happen to know a lot of them at a lot of levels. They all believe that they have a unique ability to run the race that they passionately want to run. And I know for a fact that Joe Biden passionately believes that he is the only person who can beat Donald Trump, and he has evidence of it because he did it before. Right. He knows that he has certain demographic strengths that Donald Trump cannot counter. He is the real working class white guy that's actually Donald Trump's base, so he knows how to talk to them. He believes that he is the only person that can do it. The problem is, after tonight, his party doesn't believe that.
This is my 10th one of these, and when the incumbent is running, the American people are being asked, keep what you got. Do you like what you got? Stay the course. That was not a stay the course performance from a president who, when he walked on stage, knew the fundamentals of this race were already bent against him. And that he had a 38% approval rating. 60+% of the country thinks we're on the wrong track. And as Abby noted earlier, there were already significant doubts about, can you do this for 4 more years? It's the toughest job in the world. And so even in the middle of the debate saying he had a cold, I have a cold. I get it. I get it. That sucks. But he's the president of the United States. When the phone rings at 3 o'clock in the morning, the world doesn't matter if you have a cold or not.
And the president did intensive preparation for this debate. I mean, that's the other part of this.
And they signaled that repeatedly.
They told him repeatedly. I mean, he was in Camp David. All of his top advisors were there. They were preparing him as well as they possibly could for this moment. He came in here saying, sorry, Van, just a moment, but he had to solidify, and it's not just his base, it's who voted for him the last time around, right? Now, who voted for him last time around was enough for him to beat Donald Trump. Donald Trump can stay just where he was the last time around, and if Joe Biden erodes so significantly that it's less than what Donald Trump got, Donald Trump wins, okay? That's how the math works here. So he has to bring back all of those people, whether they're Democrats or not, who cast a ballot for him. Was he able to do that tonight? I don't think there's anybody who thinks that he was.
I don't think there's any other way to put it. This was clearly a person who was diminished from where he was on the debate stage 4 years ago. I think for a lot of Americans who don't follow politics closely, they saw that and they were shocked. I will tell you, Anderson, what I see now and over the course of the next few hours and days is that it's going to come down partly to how Joe Biden makes sense of this, because his self-mythology has always been, okay, I'm the guy that gets knocked down and I get back up. That is, in some ways, it could be a real impediment to him if he's not going to be able to listen clearly to what people around him are going to say. There has to be some very hard conversations. And if he is in some ways occluded by that story that he tells himself that he can always prevail, that's going to interfere with his ability to be a clear strategic thinker.
Now, President Biden also made false claims, at least 9 false or misleading statements on first count. I'll give you some of them. He said he's the only president in a while who didn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world. Troops have, of course, died on his watch. He said he's put in a $15 per shot cap on insulin and Medicare. It's a $35 a month cap. He said it's a $200 cap on overall drug spending in Medicare. It's $2,000 a year. He said the border now has fewer crossings than when Trump was in office. That's generally not true. He said, or at least strongly suggested, unemployment was at 15%. When he took office. It was actually 6.4. He said Trump wants to get rid of Social Security. Trump doesn't. He said billionaires pay 8.2% in taxes. It's much higher. He said Trump told Americans to inject bleach amid COVID. We know Trump made foolish comments about scientists studying disinfectant injection, but didn't frame it as advice to people. And Biden said the Border Patrol endorsed him. No, its union supported the border bill he'd supported, never endorsed him himself.
Everything you said about those other presidential debates is absolutely 100% correct. But what you did not have after them was the incumbent president's party openly musing about taking him off the ticket. And I think that is something that is very different in this one. Tonight, you have MAGA gloating and Democrats outwardly worrying about the state of the race, to the point that they are not hiding their discussions about how they get Joe off the ticket. I think a lot of that is unfortunate. I think a lot of that is overblown at the moment, but I get the emotion. I thought Claire was an exhibit of that emotion, of that gut punch that she referenced, that a lot of Democrats are feeling. But here are a couple of things that I think need to be focused on, just kind of putting my sort of campaign party hat on and sort of rally the troops and get your ass in gear conversation. One is Nicole said it best. Own tonight. Don't pretend it was something it wasn't. Sit down with Joe, play that tape, play it, and slow-mo that sucker if you have to get him to appreciate exactly what it was we saw and how he performed and how in many respects he let himself down. Because if any of us know the president, and a lot of us do, have seen him over these many, many years, we know how much he regards being honest about that. So let him be honest about that and have that assessment, and take him out of situations where he's seemingly lying about his performance. He will endear himself. He will move people to appreciate a lot of things about him if he owns the moment. I thought, for example, Lawrence was also very clear in how this thing needs to get laid out. Again, don't overthink what happened. Rethink how you move forward. Reimagine what tomorrow looks like. And by tomorrow, I mean Morning Joe tomorrow. Mm-hmm. All right? And really begin to put in place the next set of building blocks. Because right now, MAGA's on the run. They got this, baby. You should see and hear the stuff that's coming up, right? They are primed. They're ready. They're like, we told you this is what he was. Joe Biden is old and out of date.
If he were CEO and he turned in a performance like that, would any corporation in America, any Fortune 500 corporation in America, keep him on as CEO? If this were Donald Trump, time and time again, we talked about the Goldwater. Where's the Barry Goldwater? To walk over and tell Richard Nixon it was over, to tell Donald Trump it was over. And now the question is, do Democrats need to do the same thing of Joe Biden? I mean, these are hard questions, but the fact is, friends, failure is just not an option. In 2024, failure is not an option. So who I love, who I respect, who I revere for their work and their duty to service over their lifetime really is not relevant. It's not relevant for any of us. It's not relevant for Democratic leaders. It's not relevant for anyone. The question is, we know Joe Biden can govern. Mm-hmm. And again, I'll debate that issue with anyone, and I will win. I will destroy anybody that wants to debate Joe Biden's record over the past 3.5 years. He can run the White House. He can run the country effectively, despite the barrage of lies that constantly come at him, like Donald Trump's lies last night. But can he run for president in 2024? Joe Biden couldn't respond to any of those lies. In fact, as the New York Times said, he spent much of the night with his mouth agape and his eyes darting back and forth. He couldn't fact check anything Donald Trump said. And not only that, he missed one layup after another after another. He couldn't respond effectively to Donald Trump trying to overthrow American democracy on January 6th. He couldn't respond effectively to Donald Trump's continued stream of lies about his own record. And he couldn't even respond effectively on the issue of abortion, where for some reason he darted wildly to the issue of immigration. We saw last night why this race has been close and why I fear Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States unless things change. I think what surprised me and what surprised a lot of people very close to Joe Biden is the fact that this man always rises to the occasion. And last night was sadly for him, and I believe for Democrats in this country. And again, if you believe what's at stake at this election is what we believe is at stake, I'll even use the word tragically. He tragically did not rise to the occasion last night.
Okay. But Biden had a terrible night. He could not land a thought, not even in the closing statement, which is something that's the easiest part. Write down a few words, go through them, go through the thoughts. And while I validate the chaos and hysteria Democrats might be feeling, anybody who cares about democracy might be feeling, anybody who cares about women's rights and our safety and our lives might be feeling, totally understand that. Watching what happened last night, again, it was terrible. It was terrible. There's no way to spin it.
I think Trump already arguably had an edge before the debate. I think that debate is, raised an awful lot of questions in the minds of a tremendous number of centrist voters. And, is it possible that the North Carolina Biden will reappear steadily every time between now and November? Yes. But it's also possible that the debate Biden will appear periodically. And we don't have the chance after the convention to choose a nominee who will be a stronger candidate. So I think the time is now. I think we have better nominees who are more likely to keep Trump out of the White House. And to me, that's paramount.
Who are they, Nick? And how do you see this potentially playing out?
The only way that it would work is if President Biden himself decided to bow out of the race. I think that, Democrats are going to be reluctant to urge Biden out for fear of harming him if he stays in. It's easy for columnists to do that. It's a lot harder if you're a Democratic office holder. But if Biden were to bow out and throw it to an open convention, then that could proceed. It would create, I think, some risks of chaos. It would also create perhaps some excitement about who would take over the nomination. And I think there's actually a pretty decent bench in the Democratic Party. Gretchen Whitmer is somebody who I think, would help win Michigan. And Michigan is a pretty crucial state the Democrats have to win. So she might be on the top of my list. But, I think Pete Buttigieg is a very impressive guy. Gavin Newsom is impressive. Gina Raimondo. I think there are a bunch of strong folks, but maybe Gretchen Whitmer would be right at the top of my list.
And it was a bet that failed kind of miserably. And when you talk to Democrats, that inconsistency from Joe Biden has been a concern for a long time. And I will say to the question, the biggest question is, how would this happen? Unless Democrats are able to convince two people, Jill Biden and his and President Biden's sister, Valerie Biden Owens, to go to him and tell him that he has to step aside, it's almost impossible for it to actually happen. Those are the people that he listens to the most. Those are the people that helped him make the big decision on actually running in 2020. If you can't convince them to convince him, it's not changing. And so kind of the wish casting that's happening at this point in the Democratic Party, it seems unlikely. And it's also just going to make it more difficult to beat Donald Trump as they get closer, because it makes him look weak and it makes him look like he doesn't have the support of his party.
I'm too depressed too, but I really am, honestly. I really don't know what should happen now and what can happen now. You asked, Mona, how could Biden be replaced? And we have a genuine crisis now in the country. Donald Trump cannot be our next president, and Joe Biden. It's not just that he can't win. I mean,
he can be our next president, Bill.
What?
Donald Trump absolutely can be.
No, I know, but he should not, ought not to be our next president in a very serious, heavy sense of ought. And, with Biden, to be fair, I mean, to be not fair, but to be maybe a little harsh, but it's not just that, he hurt his electoral chances. Millions of people out there, I do think, watched that and thought, 4 more years of him as president, it's just not doable. Now, if vice president, obviously we have a system and we have a vice president and we have a weak president who's not so strong, and things get fixed. The cabinet governs on and so forth. But I really feel like we're in a moment of genuine crisis. And I actually don't even. I sort of want to think about this now for a day or two and talk to a lot of people, because I really don't know quite what I would even recommend if they called me up from the White House tomorrow morning and said, "What should we do?" It's awfully late to get out. But, well, I think you should get out. I mean, then I still think it'll be much better. And I thought that, of course, a year ago. But I don't know. But it is not just depressing, but I really feel like it's a dangerous moment for the country. Don't you think, JVL and AB? I mean, it's not just people are being a little too political. And I know I'm the last person to criticize political analysis. Of course, we all do that. And, the questions, and some of them were more ridiculous than others. And is Trump a little saner than we thought? But really, fundamentally, this is a very dark moment, I think. Joe Biden should not be. You got to be honest about this. Okay. Joe Biden should not be president for the next 4 years. If they're patriotic, they need to at least have a serious discussion, a real discussion in the White House. And the White House chief of staff has to insist on it. And in my view, the cabinet secretaries have to insist on it, of whether this is appropriate for this candidate to go ahead. And he's been a pretty good president, but to go ahead to try to be president for the next 4 years. It's not just about electoral calculations or whether he's +4 or +6. Right. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I just feel like it's a real crisis. It's not just an electoral crisis. There's 4 months to the election. There's plenty of time for Biden to step aside. It's not, what would happen? It's such a mystery. What would happen is the delegates would be freed, and they would have a fight for the next 2 months, and then they'd have a vote in the convention, and someone would be the nominee. And it's pretty hard for me to sit here with a straight face and say that I think that the someone who would be the nominee is less capable of being president for the next 4 years than Joe Biden. I don't know if that's someone who's stronger or weaker candidate necessarily against Trump. I think it'd be as strong, probably, at least, even if it's Vice President Harris, who I think would be among the weaker ones. But I just can't in good conscience pretend that, I don't know, this is where we are. We just all have to suck it up. Maybe this is what we'll have to do. And maybe I'm overreacting, and maybe a week from now it'll feel different and Biden will go out and do 3 events and it was just a bad night. I'm open to that. And we do overreact in the moment, and I'm overreacting, I'm sure, in the moment. But I guess I just feel personally that it's irresponsible not to at least urge him and his family and the senior members of his party and his administration. It's not just the party, it's the administration has to really think about, is this the right thing to just pretend that this is the right ticket for the next 4 years?
Wow.
And if you say, oh yeah, of course, there's dozens of better candidates, but I would rather be polite to a person in power than to beat Trump. I don't care about beating Trump. I don't think it's an important election. I don't think that democracy is on the line. So I just rather defer to Joe Biden because I wouldn't want to upset his feelings. I mean, this is insanity. No, I'm sorry. If you think Joe Biden's going to win, you just don't know anything about politics. And you're in blue MAGA. And now we got to rescue red MAGA, blue MAGA. Everybody's in a goddamn cult. Don't you have eyes and ears? How could you? If you didn't watch the debate, I get it. Watch the debate. If you watch that debate and think Biden nailed it, you check yourself into a mental hospital. Or forget, oh, well, he had a rough night. Okay, yeah, okay, I get it. He didn't nail it. But he's still the best guy we got, and I bet he beats Trump. He's losing every swing state. This is pre-debate. He lost Hispanics. He lost youth vote. He's lost everything. He's down 12 points in Nevada. What? But no. And the reason why I'm desponding, guys, is as you're going to find out throughout the show. First of all, the Democratic Party, Joe Biden, et cetera, saying, no, we nailed it. We're good. No, not even close to dropping out. No way. And now the bots and trolls are all over social media going, oh yeah, it wasn't a bad night. No big deal. He's back on his A game. He's so great. He's a dynamo behind the scenes. Yeah. Well, I can't have a conversation with someone who's not attached to reality. That's insanity. So, I mean, if you lost Morning Joe, remember I told you guys that's the bellwether, right? He's the epicenter of the establishment. And even Joe Scarborough, like watching it, was like, I gotta say it. We can't. This is crazy. If you're saying Biden should continue, you're basically saying, I'm totally good with Trump winning. I'm good. I did a poll on Twitter, already like 3,000 votes on it. Does Trump want Biden to drop out of the race or to stay in the race? 84% say stay in the race. Of course he wants Biden to stay in the race. It's a guaranteed victory. Who wouldn't want him to stay in the race? Why would you want to run against someone that has a mind? Right? Well, this is revealing the game about the parties. The Democratic Party doesn't care about you. They don't care about winning elections. All they care about is their own power, money, salary, status, title. So all those people that work on the Biden campaign, if there was a new candidate, they'd be fired tomorrow. All the people at the DNC would likely be out if there's a new candidate. All of Democratic leadership is tied to Joe Biden, so they don't care that he's gonna lose. They just wanna keep their jobs. They don't care about the country, they don't care about you. They're gonna sell you out and pretend that he's perfectly fine. It's beyond insanity. If they go to the election with this guy, what are we supposed to be like? Oh yeah, I think he is fine. Oh, let us all go get excited and canvass for him and vote for him. No, I refuse to be a moron. I refuse to be, this propaganda nonsense. I haven't done it at all, as you've seen, and we've been punished for it. Like all the mainstream media, all the mainstream politicians, you radicals. Oh yeah, you don't want Biden as a candidate? Are you trying to help Trump? No, now the jury is in. The people trying to help Trump are the people at the head of the Democratic Party. Because I can't imagine a better way to help Donald Trump than to run this guy against him. It's the only way we lose.
And listen, nobody is a bigger fan of Kamala Harris than I am. And Gavin Newsom did a remarkable job tonight as a surrogate. And what he said, it's not that I disagree with anything they're saying, but those two people are signaling to a whole lot of Americans that are paying attention, how come they're not running? How come the Democratic Party doesn't have them at the top of the ticket instead of using them to shore up what have become, after tonight, some pretty glaring weaknesses in our president?
Are you saying the only solution is to take him off the ticket?
No, I don't know, honestly, what the solution is tonight. I know how this felt tonight. It felt like a gut punch to most people in this country who are paying close attention and know how dangerous Donald Trump is to all the values that we hold dear. And so I think it'll take a couple of days for people to recover from the gut punch. But there will be leaders that have the ability to talk to the president. I think the president's family would get involved if it actually got to that point. It may be that you can repair this damage. Maybe he can come out and show more vigor and show the ability to really stay on track. But, there were some moments tonight that all of us were holding our breath. And that's not the kind of thing you want to happen 130 days out from an election when you've got Donald Trump on the other side of the equation.
Right.
If Joe Biden decides he does not want to seek this nomination, he can release all his delegates. And then it basically becomes an open convention. And we haven't had a real open convention really since 1952. So, and that becomes a whole, you probably have the vice president, you might have a couple of governors, you might have the home state governor in Illinois, who's the host of the convention, wanting to follow in the footsteps of an Illinois governor in 1952 who was able to gather that nomination in Adlai Stevenson when the convention decided to hand it to him. But it all begins with Joe Biden would have to agree to do this. And you don't walk away from these things. They're going to fight. You feel a little bit of the fight tonight. They're trying to say, look, he was thrown off a little bit at the beginning. I don't know how you're thrown off, that you're surprised that inflation is the first question, but that's their excuse.
Chuck,
maybe that'll be enough to calm the waters. I don't buy it. And I'll tell you this, Tom, I think there are two public Democrats to be watching for and to see if they say anything. Because I think there are two Democrats who, if they went public with this, I don't know if Joe Biden could stop the freight train. One would be Nancy Pelosi and the other would be Barack Obama. And I think those are the two most influential Democrats right now in this process, in this party, and where this could end up going. Among the feedback I got from one elected official who said, that's his performance after 5 days at Camp David? That's after rest? So I do think, frankly, the campaign had to come out with some explanation because I guess the cold is what they got to hang their hat on this.